Good afternoon from the KUOW newsroom. This is Seattle Now. I'm Patricia Murphy. Coming up, we'll take an in-depth look at how the cost of housing is factoring into the mayor's race. But first, here's a roundup of today's top stories. It's Wednesday, October 15th. The Seattle City Council has approved Mayor Bruce Harrell's proposal to increase the local sales tax to fund public safety programs in the city. Noelle Gasca has more on the vote.
The 0.1% increase is expected to raise around $39 million in its first year. Harrell's proposal outlines using a portion of that money to increase staffing within programs like the city's care department, which screens 911 calls and dispatches emergency services. Councilmember Maritza Rivera was the only no vote and said while she supports the services the tax increase will fund,
I just think we should be looking at the budget and find money to pay for those things out of our existing budget, but not that we should be increasing a sales tax. It's really a regressive tax that's going to hurt our low-income families.
In a statement to KUOW, Mayor Harrell said the increased sales tax is another tool to help the city build more effective public safety systems. Noelle Gasca, KUOW News.
Seattle tech companies will face new staffing hurdles if a $100,000 fee on the H-1B visa survives court challenges, Monica Nicholsberg reports.
Companies like Amazon and Microsoft use the H-1B visa to hire skilled workers from other countries. But the Trump administration says the program is being abused by outsourcing firms and the U.S. tech industry. The White House says tech companies shouldn't need to hire internationally when they've been laying off thousands of American workers. Priyanka Kulkarni says it's not that simple.
Hiring overall seems to be contracting, but hiring for highly specialized roles has actually gone up.
She's CEO of KCM, a Seattle startup that advises employers on hiring internationally.
So you do actually see a higher number of AI engineer openings. You do see higher number of applied scientist openings.
She says there's still a shortage of domestic talent needed to fill those roles. Monica Nicholsberg, KUOW News.
Meanwhile, two major Seattle medical institutions are pausing their sponsorships of foreign worker visas. UW Medicine and the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center say they'll suspend hiring under the H-1B visa program. The University of Washington already paused its H-1B sponsorships after President Trump announced the new fees last month. Healthcare employers say they rely on the visa program to hire for hard-to-fill jobs. Washington State is expected to need about 6,000 more doctors than it has by 2030. As more people are being detained by ICE, attorneys and judges in Seattle are finding that an increasing number of them have been unlawfully locked up. Gustavo Segrero has more on that story.
People can file what's called a habeas petition when they believe they've been imprisoned in violation of the law or due process, and they ask a federal judge to order their release. Matt Adams is with the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project. He says immigrants in ICE detention are now winning these kinds of cases more frequently in California, Nebraska.
We've seen these habeas petitions prevailing in the Western District of Louisiana. These are not courts that are traditionally receptive to immigration habeas claims.
The Immigrant Rights Project has filed or has helped others file dozens of habeas cases across the country this year. Several people have also used habeas cases to win their release from the Tacoma Detention Center. Government attorneys also defend these cases in court, presenting evidence that the detentions are justified. Gustavo Segrero, KUOW News.
The Seattle Mariners are back in action today against the Toronto Blue Jays for Game 3 of the American League Championship Series. Seattle Now sports correspondent Vaughn Jones has more.
After two straight wins in Toronto, the Mariners are looking to take a dominant series lead tonight in Seattle. History is on the Mariners' side. Teams up 2-0 have gone on to win the series 84% of the time. Mariners manager Dan Wilson spoke to the media this afternoon before the game. He says the team is going to lean on the home crowd.
To me, it's just I feel excited to get back out there tonight. I think, we were excited about played in this ballpark tonight and feeling the energy again from the fans who've been incredibly supportive, who've just been fantastic.
If the Mariners win tonight's game, they're one win away from their first ever World Series appearance. Vaughn Jones, KUOW News.
Fingers crossed, Mariners. The Seattle City Council this week unanimously approved a major overhaul to the city's affordable housing program in an effort to make it more attractive to developers. KNKX Murrow News fellow Nate Sanford has more.
Seattle is one of many Washington cities that offers property tax breaks to developers who set aside some of their units, with discounted rent for people making less than the median income. But new construction has stalled this year, and builders say better incentives are needed. Local developer Norris Cooper addressed the city council.
And we're at a time where we are battling tariffs and interest rates, escalating construction costs.
The approved updates increase the cap on annual rent adjustments. It also sets higher limits on how much landlords can charge for new income-restricted units. Some housing advocates worry the higher costs will be out of reach for renters who qualify for the program. The package of updates also lowers application fees for developers and streamlines the income verification process for tenants. Nate Sanford, reporting.
Turning to the environment, salmon advocates say they've been left with no choice but to head back to court. They filed a lawsuit this week to protect the endangered fish. Northwest Public Broadcasting's Courtney Flatt has the details.
The move comes after the Trump administration backed out of a Biden-era deal. The historic deal paused litigation and could have considered removing the 4 lower Snake River dams. The suit is headed up by environmental, fishing, and carbon-free energy groups. The state of Oregon also filed paperwork. They say without more help, some salmon runs are heading toward extinction. The groups are asking the federal government to spill more water over dams, which could help young salmon get to the ocean faster. They also want to lower reservoirs so salmon spend less time in warmer water behind dams. And they're asking the federal government to better control the birds and fish that eat salmon. Dam advocates say this litigation could threaten the Northwest's low-cost energy supply. I'm Courtney Flatt.
Now our feature story today. In the Seattle mayor's race, many voters are focused on the cost of living in an ever more expensive city. They're pressing incumbent Mayor Bruce Harrell and his challenger Katie Wilson on who can build more housing and make the city more affordable. Amy Radel explains.
Incumbent Bruce Harrell is seeking a second term as mayor. Katie Wilson, the founder of an advocacy group called the Transit Riders Union, came out ahead in the primary and is hoping to unseat him in November. In one campaign ad, Wilson takes aim at the cost of living in Seattle through the lens of a pizza restaurant on Capitol Hill that charges $8 a slice.
Not faulting the folks who sold it to me, that's kind of just what pizza costs these days. It's what food costs in Seattle these days. It is crazy expensive.
Wilson's explanation is that those restaurant prices are related to scarce housing. She says employers have to pay more to retain workers whose own living expenses are too high, and she pledges, if elected, to build more housing. These issues, the high cost of food and housing, are weighing heavily on voters as the mayor's race enters its final weeks. Stacy Jones is a teaching professor of economics at Seattle University who checked out Wilson's ad about building more housing.
Don't know if it would lower the cost of pizza, but I think a strong case can be made for more housing density.
Jones studies economic inequality, which has been growing in King County since the pandemic. Jones says she might use this pizza ad to help her students understand theories of supply and demand.
The Econ 1 of this, you'd say, oh, this is a supply side explanation for why pizza costs a lot, right? It's because one of the inputs costs a lot, and that input is labor.
Jones says a demand-side explanation would be that there are a lot of people in Seattle who don't blink at paying $8 for a slice of pizza. Those high earners affect affordability for everyone. Meanwhile, restaurant owners say they're barely hanging on themselves despite these high prices. Charlie Anthe owns Moshi Moshi Sushi in the Ballard neighborhood. He chairs the Seattle Restaurant Alliance, which has endorsed Bruce Harrell. Anthe says Seattle's staggering restaurant prices were brought home to him on a recent trip to Hawaii, a place also known for expensive food.
The prices at the hotel, which is a tourist markup nightmare, were cheaper than going to a diner in Seattle. And that was the moment when I realized that Seattle had gotten out of control.
He says the prices reflect one of the highest minimum wages in the country. It's currently $20.76 and goes up in January. Anthe says labor costs are typically a third of a restaurant's budget, but in Seattle, they're more like 40 to 50%.
And when you get up to a number that high, everything else starts to break.
Anthe says he knows housing is the biggest anxiety for his staff, and he supports city officials' efforts to create more.
We wholeheartedly agree that one of the biggest things that the city needs to do is find a way to reduce the cost of housing. And from our perspective, that's simply, you have to build more housing.
Coming off her shift at the Fred Meyer on Lake City Way, Melissa Rose would agree.
Housing is probably the greatest problem of the 2000s.
Rose has worked 5 years at the store and is also a steward for United Food and Commercial Workers Local 3000, which endorsed Katie Wilson for mayor. Rose says she and her spouse lucked out because their income has qualified them to rent one of the city's more than 6,000 subsidized units funded by a property tax exemption for developers. They pay $1,650 per month for a 500 square foot apartment in the Lake City neighborhood.
This is like a lower income area. This is where someplace where two working people who are working retail can live.
At Fred Meyer, Rose has also had an up-close view of rising food prices. Those prices are changing what she can afford to eat, no more ground beef, for example, and she knows it affects the many retirees and immigrants who shop there.
Those are not traditionally high-income demographics.
Rose says people in the senior housing complexes nearby already flock to discount days.
It's a running joke that Senior Tuesdays at Lake City are just a complete nightmare.
But parent company Kroger is closing the Lake City Fred Meyer this month. Rose says those seniors will need to trek elsewhere for groceries and discounts. So what can the city's mayor actually do about these issues? Katie Wilson says the city may not be suited to running a grocery store, but perhaps it could partner with a grocer who wants to serve that neighborhood.
It's very unfortunate, and I do think that it's worth exploring a public option grocery store, figuring out what the city can do to help to fill that gap and make sure that we don't have a food and pharmacy desert in that neighborhood.
But Wilson is more focused on housing. She wants landlords to pay moving expenses if they raise the rent more than 5%. And she wants to add higher housing density in pockets all across the city.
And, I think you look at the comprehensive plan that the mayor's office transmitted, and it doesn't go nearly far enough in allowing for building the housing that we need over the next 10, 20 years. So I am in favor of creating more neighborhood centers where multifamily building is allowed.
Wilson says it's not too late to seek those changes next year. For his part, Bruce Harrell says the new comprehensive plan is already on course to vastly increase the city's housing supply.
The comp plan that we proposed brings on a lot more inventory, 330,000 units, which came from a base of 120,000 units. So in other words, we more than doubled where we can build here, and by that we relieve the pressure on the price of a home.
And he says he's scrutinizing all the ways city offices can play a role when it comes to facilitating more housing.
So everything that I can control, whether it's permitting, housing inventory, utility taxes, we'll make sure that we do what we can do.
Research by the Pew Charitable Trust found that adding housing, even for high-income residents, helps slow rent growth for older, more affordable units. When it comes to food prices, Harrell said he doesn't support city-run grocery stores. He does support the city's recent changes to allow more stores in neighborhoods.
So what we think makes all the sense in the world is to get as many corner grocery stores as possible, getting fresh food in there, giving them startup money to do that, and we changed the zoning laws to allow that kind of expansion.
But it takes years to add more housing and neighborhood stores. In the near term, there are more modest proposals that both candidates agree on. They include more funding for food banks and the city's Fresh Bucks program, which gives participants a monthly stipend to buy fruits and vegetables. Wilson says if elected, she wants a Seattle that is open to all, especially youth and elders. Harrell says if re-elected, he wants a Seattle where people of limited means, like his own parents if they were alive, could still afford to live. Amy Radel, KUOW News.
Next time on Seattle Now, it's the Great Shakeout. We'll talk about the risks and reality of earthquakes in our region and what to do when the ground starts shaking.
Drop cover and hold on. Don't try to run outside because those bricks from the facade of the building might be the thing that's coming down on the sidewalk.
That's what happened in Pioneer Square.
Exactly, like we saw in Nisqually.
Hear more Thursday morning. And that's all for today from the KUOW Newsroom in Seattle. Our producer is Andy Hurst, and I'm Patricia Murphy. Seattle Now and KUOW are members of the NPR network. See ya.